Alrighty, fit folk, in today's video, we are going to be talking about the calorie deficit, which is the key to weight loss, regardless of, whether you're doing keto, fasting, low carb, high carb. This is really the fundamental principle behind most weight loss, and most people don't really understand it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through and talk about what the calorie deficit is, 5 different types of calorie deficit, so over kind of different periods. And then at the end, if anyone is online and has asked a question, I'm going to go through them. So, give me a like, tell me where you are, ask some questions as we're going. And then once we get to the end, I'll get a brush through this in like 5-10 minutes. And when we get to the end, I'll do some questions if anyone has asked them. Otherwise, just leave them and I'll pick them up later. So today we're going to talk about the calorie deficit. Now, anyone who's interested in losing weight should understand the calorie deficit. This is not about calorie counting. This is just about understanding the concept, right? So the calorie deficit is an energy shortfall between how much energy you're expending and how much energy you're absorbing from food. So on a very simple level, let's say somebody expends 2,500 calories in their kind of basal metabolism, when they're absorbing from food, their activity, their exercise, those bits make up your expenditure, so 2,500, and then your breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, whatever you're doing in the course of a day, that might add up to 2,000 calories, and that would create a 500 calorie deficit. Now, these numbers are going to vary a lot, and it's going to be very dynamic, which I'm going to show you as we go by. But what happens is, when you create that energy shortfall between what you're expending and what you're absorbing from food over a period, whether it's a day, a week, a month, your body has to find that energy from somewhere, and it's going to borrow it from its energy stores. Now, we store a little bit of carbohydrate, maybe 2,000 calories. We have protein kind of stored in our muscles, but it's hard to get at. And then we have a big reservoir of fat storage. And what happens when you create a deficit, if you're kind of overweight, almost all of your deficit is going to come out of your fat stores, which is great. When you get very lean, you're at much more risk of losing muscle mass. But generally, they say kind of 75% comes from your fat and 25% from your muscle mass. So we're going to crack on. But what we're talking about is this energy shortfall, which will help you lose weight over time. So I'm going to start with just an hourly look at the deficit, because basically we have kind of 2 states, which is you're in an energy surplus when you're absorbing more food energy than you're using, and we're in a deficit. And people think that you can only really be in one and not in the other. And actually, your body's cycling in and out of the surplus and the deficit over the course of the day. So in the postprandial, so after you eat a meal, you'll be absorbing a lot more energy from the food than you are expending. And I've just drawn a couple of lines here. So basically, to think that your energy expenditure kind of goes through the day, and then your absorption from food shoots up after a meal and drops back, and shoots up after, and this is 3 meals, and shoots up. So in those 3 bits of the day, you're in a surplus, you're in an anabolic phase where you're building. This is why people are always trying to time protein around strength training. And then, in the evening or in a big gap in a fasting phase, you're in a catabolic phase where you're breaking down. So that's when you're in a deficit. So this is this idea that we're going in and out of the deficit and surplus during the day, just so you don't get too kind of rigid in your idea of what a deficit and a surplus is, because we're always using energy most of the time of the day. We're absorbing some energy, except when you're in a kind of deep fast at night, and we're just going in and out of this kind of surplus phase and deficit phase. But what we want to understand, the really great way to understand the deficit against the surplus against maintenance, is kind of at the daily level, which we'll talk about now. So in a day, imagine that you're burning 2,500 calories, which is a kind of low energy expenditure guy or a high energy expenditure woman. And you have this kind of 2,500 calories of expenditure. Now, if you were to eat 3,000 calories, that would put you in a surplus, which would be a really kind of ideal environment for building muscle mass. So if you were to eat a kind of 10% surplus, bump that up to 2,750 calories, you would be in a great surplus. And then if you're doing your strength training and you're eating sufficient protein, that's a great way to build muscle. If you are to eat exactly the same amount, kind of match out, then you're going to be at maintenance. This is what we call your maintenance, and that's going to pretty much maintain your weight. Like, depending on what type of activity you're doing, you can be building or losing muscle at maintenance, but really this is just kind of your bog standard energy needs. And people revert to maintenance pretty naturally because we have really strong hormonal feedback systems, which is why, you know, people eat 1 million calories in a year and actually they only kind of, you know, they gain a few pounds here and there. And then this is the one that's really interesting. What we're interested in is when intake is below your expenditure, that's what we call your deficit, which is what we're interested in. In this case, I've drawn expenditure at 2,500, intake at 2,000, and that's the 500 calorie deficit, which is the mythical, you will lose a pound a week if you create this perfect 500 calorie deficit, which as time goes on in this video, you'll see is pretty much nonsense because your energy expenditure and your energy intake are both dynamic and they're both linked to each other. So if you overeat, your energy expenditure will go up. And if you undereat, your energy expenditure will go down. So these two are very, very dynamic. Also, if you expend more, you're going to be more hungry. It's a very dynamic relationship, which is really, really important. Now, next up we have, you can see that? Yeah, cool. So the one that really interests me the most for the deficit is the weekly deficit. So I run a business called Weekday Weight Loss, well, FitFolk, but the product is called Weekday Weight Loss, where I coach people lose weight. And we try and create our deficit during the week because it's just a really nice, relaxed way to do it. And you don't have to be too kind of anal about your calorie or your food choices. You just kind of get in a rhythm of planning your meals really well during the week, create your deficit, and at the weekend we pop up and relax. And this is kind of a really classic kind of way that, oh, hey Zuber, that's cool. First time to see someone interact. So if you do this and pop up, that's just a really natural way to create a deficit. Now, having 5 low days and 2 high days, that's just what classic bodybuilders do. So there's nothing wrong with that. We know that. It's really good. Even helps protect metabolism, can improve adherence. I just do it for lifestyle reasons because I want to eat more at the weekend. But we get in and create this deficit. And the cool thing about a weekly deficit is you can mess up days. You can mess up Monday, you can mess up Wednesday, and you can still kind of clean it up and get to where you want to be come Sunday. So if a guy is eating 2,000 calories, is expending 20,000 calories in a week, and he's eating 1,500, then he's winning. And if a woman is expending 16,000 calories in a week and she's eating 12,000, then she's winning. So this is how we work it at Weekday Weight Loss. This is the weekly deficit. And what we're trying to do is, for a guy, you're trying to create kind of 5,000 calorie deficit, get that 1.5 pounds a week. And for a woman, 3,000 calorie deficit, get that pound a week. The whole, a pound of fat equals 3,500 calories perfectly. That's just the amount of energy stored. In practice, in real world weight loss, you can't get too hung up on those numbers. Now, let's see if I've done this upside down. No, we are still going. All right. This is getting a bit more interesting. So when you're talking about a deficit over a day or over a week, it's pretty simple. There's not a lot of adaptation. There's not a lot of things changing. But when you talk about it over a longer period, your body will start defending itself from fat loss. There's hormonal defenses. So your body, particularly leptin, but you know, there's insulin, there's ghrelin, there's all these things. But the easiest one is to think of leptin. So there is a hormone secreted from our fat cells which sends a signal to our brain, to our hypothalamus, to tell us about our energy status and what's happening with our fat mass. And when our body senses that we're losing fat, it will tell our hypothalamus to start adjusting. And basically, as we lose weight, we use less energy just because we're smaller, so pure physics, but we also get these adaptations where we start to use that. There's a famous study where they looked at a 25% deficit. So they took people and they measured their energy expenditure, and they were on average 2,840 calories. And then what they did was they put them all in a 25% deficit, so down to 2,132 calories, and they did that for 12 weeks. And this is actually, they actually gave them the food. It's a metabolic ward study, so you know that it's more accurate than a normal kind of free living study. And what they found was that the energy expenditure started up at 2,844 calories. They lost 6 kilos, so they lost 13 pounds, so it was successful in terms of weight loss. But what happened was the deficit just collapsed. So the deficit started up at 712 calories, and by the end of it, it was down to 258 calories because the body is defending itself from weight loss. So think about it, the deficit has more, it's a third really. It's more than half. So what has happened? It hasn't stopped, you haven't stopped losing weight, but basically what's happened is the energy expenditure has dropped, and these are these adaptations you have to be aware of when you're trying to lose weight. And this is the reason why natural bodybuilders adjust their calories down and add cardio as a prep goes on, because they're trying to defend this deficit. So you need to be aware of this shrinking deficit. And from what we know, there's not a lot of difference between the different diet methodologies in terms of a metabolic advantage of protecting against this, losing this deficit. So basically, we know cyclical diets work a little bit. Some people would say that, ketogenic or low carb diets are superior. That's not what the meta studies say. There's really hasn't seen a lot of evidence of a metabolic advantage. It's more about what keeps you full, because these are the controlled studies, which kind of I'll talk about now. So this is a really interesting one. If you want to lose a whole bunch of weight, you really want to try and create an annual deficit. So over the course of the year, you want to be in a net energy deficit. And this is why it's really challenging, because your energy expenditure will decline and you will get hungry. These are the two major adaptations that we have as we lose weight. This is a kind of a cute little chart. You can't see it very well. I'll cut in an image at some point. But basically, this is, they looked at the Learn Diet, Weight Watchers, Zone, Volumetrics, Atkins, Jenny Craig, Ornish, and low fat. And what they found was after 6 months, the best performing diet was the Atkins diet. They lost 10 kilos, followed by Volumetrics, which is kind of a lower fat, high volume diet. Then the Zone diet, Jenny Craig, Ornish. Anyway, they're all doing really well at 6 months. And in every case, in every single diet, between 6 months and 12 months, they regain weight. And this is what always happens. This is totally normal. People regain the weight between 6 and 12 months. And this is why creating an annual energy deficit is really challenging. Because what happens is these adaptations, you are expending less energy. Say after 6 months, your energy expenditure has declined significantly. You might have dropped 500 calories in energy expenditure, and you are hungry as hell. So you're under stress. Your deficit has declined massively because you're eating a bit more. You're sneaking bits of food in here and there just because you're hungry. Your energy expenditure and your scale progress is grinded to a halt, and then you chuck it in, or you just can't hack it anymore. And this is what happens to everyone. It's totally normal. It's your body's kind of starvation mechanism kicking in a world of hyperpalatable food. So it's just normal behavior. What you want to do to create an annual deficit is find some way to adjust. Now, I'm not saying that you need to count calories. I'm just using calories as a way. This is starting at 2,800. We've got 2,200 for a couple of months, 2,000 for a couple of months, 1,800 for a couple of months, and then we take a month off and jump back up, have a refeed, a diet break of a month of about 2,600 calories, and then we do that stepwise again. There's some addition of activity and cardio in there. And what this is an annual energy deficit of 150,000 calories, which, this is someone that's probably expended, what is that? That's probably 900, probably 1 million calories for the year, and they've consumed, they've absorbed from their food 8,500 calories. And they created this big kind of 150,000 annual deficit. And for that, that's going to give them like 50 pounds of fat loss. So 50 pounds of weight loss. So let's say 40 pounds of fat, 5 pounds of muscle, and just 5 of water, which doesn't really count. And that is your annual deficit, which is why an energy deficit is so interesting. So that is a wrap up. This is my first live video, so thanks for anyone who's watched this live. I can't see any questions in that, so I will probably wrap up. And where is that comment? Yeah, cool. So I will wrap this up, but if you have questions, or if there's a topic you'd like me to cover, just stick it in the comments and I will pick it up and work it into the next video, or I'll just text you back. So I'm gonna kind of do these videos in a live version. I know lots of people who watch this channel are asleep right now, so I'll do them live and then I'll pick up the comments and work them into the next video, or I'll just do a straight kind of Q&A video sitting on my laptop. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you again. There'll be lots of these, so do check them out. Okay, catch you, bye.